If you pull a hard drive from an evidence locker at 3 in the morning, the building usually hums in a very specific way. The climate control in the basement lab runs on a heavy cycle to keep the server racks at 18 degrees. And outside, the highway traffic off the 401 is just a dull, rhythmic wash against the concrete foundation. I was working out of the Integrated Technological Crime Unit facility just north of Milton. It was a Tuesday in late November. My job that night was purely administrative, verifying hash values on 34 seized SATA drives from a commercial fraud investigation out of London before Crown disclosure on Friday. It is dull, repetitive work. You run the imaging software. You wait for the string of numbers to match the warrant intake sheet. You sign the ledger, and you move to the next bay. At 3:03 a.m., the secondary monitor on my test bench flickered. It didn't lose power. It just dropped to a lower refresh rate, the way monitors do when a background application overrides display priority. I looked over at the network tab. We keep the forensic analysis benches physically air-gapped from the public internet. Everything routes through an isolated internal switch, purely so our tools can talk to the local storage arrays. But the activity light on port 7 was solid amber. Port 7 was labeled DECOM04. It went to an old rack-mounted HP ProLiant that had been decommissioned 8 months earlier after an internal hardware audit. It sat on the bottom shelf of the secondary cabinet, completely disconnected from power, or at least it had been when I walked through the bay at midnight with my coffee. I walked over to the cabinet with a flashlight. The server's power supply cable was still dangling, unplugged, tied off with a yellow zip tie. But the Ethernet cable was seated in the onboard NIC, and the amber link light was glowing steady. My first thought was a residual capacitor charge, or a grounding fault backfeeding through the switch chassis. It happens with older patch panels when the building ground shifts during seasonal freezes. I reached down and squeezed the plastic clip to pull the patch cable out of the back of the server. The moment the clip depressed, the fan in the power supply spun up. A high, clean whine. I stood there for 3 or 4 seconds, just holding the flashlight beam on the back of the machine. The cable wasn't drawing power from the wall. It was drawing power over the Ethernet line from an active PoE switch on the other side of the facility wall. Someone had repatched the wall jack in the telecom riser down the hall to supply power over the line. I went back to my terminal, pulled up the local packet sniffer, and pointed it at the port address. Normally, an intrusion attempt against a law enforcement node looks noisy. It's brute force credential stuffing, automated vulnerability scans, or malformed packets trying to crash the kernel. This wasn't hitting our firewall. It wasn't trying to access our local case files at all. It was using the decommissioned ProLiant as a blind relay. It was transmitting outbound traffic, packaged in 80-byte encrypted chunks, masquerading as routine hardware telemetry for the building's Honeywell HVAC system. The destination addresses weren't foreign IPs. They were domestic, residential broadband blocks assigned to providers in Brampton, Vaughan, and Guelph. Over 400 distinct endpoints, checking in at 30-second intervals, receiving instructions routed through an RCMP facility's internal bypass. We weren't the target. We were the host. I opened the command interface to isolate the VLAN, my hands moving fast on the keys. Before I could execute the script to sever the switch port, the command line interface wiped itself clean. The cursor jumped to the top left of the black screen. A single line printed out in plain ASCII text. 1448 Britannia Rd W. I stopped typing. That is not a government building. That is a 2-story red brick house in Streetsville, where my wife was sleeping with our 4-year-old son while I worked the night shift. Directly beneath the address, a new line appeared, 03-1244. I looked at the digital clock on the wall above the bench. It read 3:13 a.m. I grabbed the desk phone and dialed the direct line to the regional dispatch desk in Aurora. The phone rang twice, clicked as if picked up, and then dropped straight to a flat, continuous dial tone. I tried my personal cell phone. The screen showed full bars of LTE, but the call failed immediately with an operator error code I had never seen before. I turned around, grabbed a pair of side cutters from the tool rack, walked back to the secondary cabinet, and cut the Cat 6 cable clean through. Both halves dropped to the floor. The server fan whined down to a dead stop. When I sat back down at the bench, the monitor had returned to normal. The terminal was blank. The packet capture history was gone, overwritten by a standard Windows memory crash dump that made it look like the machine had simply rebooted due to a power fluctuation. There was only one item remaining on the local desktop: an unindexed, uncompressed JPEG image titled with that night's date. I opened it. It was a wide-angle shot of my driveway taken from across the street. The timestamp embedded in the metadata was 3:08 a.m. My wife's silver Civic was parked near the garage, and the motion sensor light above the front porch had just switched on, catching a thin mist of frost falling across the lawn. I filed an internal security incident report at 6:30 a.m. when the day supervisor came in. The internal investigation concluded 3 weeks later. The official finding was an electrical ground fault on the switch that caused a corrupt packet mirror, combined with a local malware infection on my workstation. They told me the file on my desktop was likely an artifact of an automated phishing test that hadn't been cleared by the IT security contractor. The telecom riser down the hall was rekeyed. The server was physically crushed in an industrial shredder, and I was reassigned to administrative support at division headquarters in London. I moved my family to a rental outside of Stratford 2 months later. We didn't tell our extended family the new street address until after the lease was signed. But 3 days after we unpacked the last box, our smart thermostat lost its Wi-Fi connection at exactly 3 in the morning, rebooted itself, and set the display language to a custom diagnostic mode that no manual in the manufacturer's database can account for.